We dig in on the 2024 goalie class with Greg Balloch of Elite Prospects.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at The Reef, and also co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL podcast. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And today we're going to get our rundown of the goalie class. So instead of doing profile by profile for all the goalies, because it's hard to discuss goalies for that long, each individual, we just have like kind of a nice big lump sum of getting Greg Balloch's thoughts on the goalies. We kind of go through his top guys and then try to find one that fits that Mike Grier profile. So before we get into all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. There's no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job. Post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And now we bring in Greg to talk about the goalies. Greg, how's it going, buddy?
Good. Thanks for having me on again.
I'm surprised you came back, but there's you have a very niche corner of being someone who can talk about goalies, and not only goalies, goalie prospects. So there's three of you guys, and I've found one. So you don't let those guys go away, right?
I'm just surprised there's that much, that many people craving for the niche goalie content that you're asking for, but I'm here for it. 100%.
When you have the season like the Sharks had, anything that you don't have to talk about the Sharks is good things. So we are continuing our effort to try to find a Sharks goalie of the future. We're going to be talking about a bunch of different goalies today. So, Greg, let's start with your overall thoughts on this draft class. Doesn't seem like there's a guy kind of like last year, right, where there was nobody kind of a first round talent, but last year there was a huge run in that second and third round. What do you think about this year's goalie class?
Yeah, I think it's been pretty well documented. It's not an amazing class of goaltenders this year, but there's still guys available at the top end that will play in the league. And the question just comes whether they're elite or not. So that's the only thing. We don't have any goalies ranked A in our grades at Elite Prospects this year. The highest we have are a few B goaltenders. And for me, there's a clear four at the top that kind of set themselves apart from the rest that I think are the four that'll be ones that'll play at least the most in the league that I see from what I've watched on them. And those four are Ryerson Leenders, Eemil, Vinni, Carter George, and Kim Saarinen, one of the Finnish goaltenders. So those are the four to me that are kind of head of the class, but it's not like an amazing class of goaltenders this year. These are just solid goaltenders that have high-end skill that still have a bit of questions around them. So they're not going to be probably an elite starting goaltender. At least it's not shaping up to be, but it's still very much worth a high pick. Maybe not a first round pick, but a high enough pick.
Yeah, and the Sharks, they have 2 second-round picks. Of course, theirs, which will be pick 33, and then they have the Devils pick, which is 42, and they have another pick with Tampa, the Tampa Bay's third-round pick. So I think if the Sharks want to get a goalie, last year they missed out on the run, right? And I think Mike Grier really wanted to try to get one. So I think there might have to be some movement, maybe if they kind of moved down a little bit from that second-round pick. But like you said, last year, it's hard to try to forecast where goalies go. They just it seems like they just go on a run, and then everyone's like, oh, I got to grab a goalie now, and then that's usually what happens, right?
Yeah, everyone at the draft table, the whoever the main goalie scout is, will have a guy that they have in mind, and it just really comes down to whether the team picks in a location that makes sense to take the guy in that area, and then how hard the scout is pushing to take that goaltender. So once you get past the first 3 or 4 goalies, it really becomes a crapshoot in terms of what order they go in. It's a little different than when you scout players for the draft, where you can pretty much nail the first bunch of selections, but with goalies you can't really do that. Like I said, you can kind of eliminate it, and by process of elimination have the top group that will probably be the first bunch to be in that run. But other than that, it's a crapshoot.
All right, so let's start. Who's your number one guy going into the draft so far?
So for me, despite his dropping in the central scouting rankings, it's still Ryerson Leenders, the top goaltender for me. He's just the safest bet, and he does so many things well. Like he's not going to be flashy and jump off the page at a lot of scouts, which I think is why he slipped in the rankings a little bit. He plays a very quiet, controlled game, forces the rebounds into good areas with his hands when he's tracking well. And then his play reading ability, how he sets himself up for second opportunities and third opportunities it bodes really well for him at the next level in my eyes. So that's why I have him at the top. I think he's the safest bet. He did slip in the rankings, as I mentioned. He played for Mississauga in the OHL, and he lost his starting job and actually split in the playoffs with the other goaltender. But that other goaltender that beat him out is essentially the next Carey Price. Like, he's going to be a first round pick. Like, it's no slight against him that he was beat out for that when it came to crunch time. But, it cost him a bit in that rankings, I think, in the central scouting, because they look at that and it doesn't look good on paper when you lose your starting job.
No.
But Ivankovic, the guy who he's splitting time with in Mississauga, is, like I mentioned, he's essentially the next Carey Price. He's 16 and he was, leading a ton of categories in the OHL in terms of goaltending. So he's still the top goalie, Ryerson Leenders. Like I said, he's not flashy. I compare him to more of like a Cam Talbot style goaltender, where he's just kind of unassuming, but just does all the little things really well. And like I said, he has that high end play reading ability, which to me screams success at the next level, which is what you're looking for in a prospect.
Yeah, so Leenders, if you don't know, he's 6 foot, 165 pounds, so maybe a little bit small for what Mike Grier was. Third at the midterm, then dropped to 10th there. But yeah, watching Mississauga in the playoffs, because they played Sudbury, and you saw the 16-year-old goalie, and yeah, you saw something special there, especially as a 16-year-old, and having to face like guys like Quentin Musty night in, night out. That's not a easy task, and I think he played pretty well in that series as well. So all right, so who are some of the other guys kind of rounding out your top four here?
Well, Carter George is the other big Canadian name, and he was the guy at the U18s that actually got the bulk of the playing time over Leenders at that tournament, and he's right up there too. Like I said, he's in that top four group that could easily, any one of those four could be the first goalie off the board in my eyes. So Carter George, another guy who's probably not going to jump off the page to the Sharks scouts if their main keys are size and mobility. He's a smaller goaltender, 6 feet tall. But to me, the immediate first thing that jumps off the page to him is his puck handling ability. And I think that's, you don't have to be a goalie scout to see that when you watch Carter George, because he is so active and it's amazing.
He's leading the rush.
I've said it on
Muddy Ducks
in the past. If you plunked him in the NHL right now, he would be a top 10 puck handling goaltender. So it's incredible what he can do. It's not going to make or break his value as a prospect, but man, it's something to behold when you see him in the lineup, and he's got other skills as well. He's got really good post integration. Like it's pro quality at this point, which generally the top end prospects that are going to be the first goalies off the board, you want to see that, right? Their post integration, the way they move into RVH on the post and transition out of it. It's like I said, it's pro quality, and you worry about his reverse VH when he goes down on the post like that, because he is a bit undersized. And a lot of those guys, if they linger in that position where they're down on the post too long, you can get beat over the shoulder, especially when you're 6 feet tall. But he's very active in that position. He doesn't linger in it too long. He's smart. I really like his usage of it. So it's there's a lot of really nice signs to his game that, like I said, have him at the top of that class in the draft this year.
Yeah, I mean, if you've watched any of the during the playoffs here, Henry Lundqvist is just going nuts on goalies just hanging there because they're getting either the puck off the head or
and it comes down to usage, right? It's just the smarts of when to jump out of that position and when to go into that position and what's the right time to transition. And it's a really tough thing for a lot of goalies to grasp. It takes years. Some pro goalies still don't have full grasp of it, clearly, from the stuff that Lundqvist is showing you. So the fact that he is very smart with it is a very good sign to me, and it shows that he studies the position extremely well. And it's, like I said, it's what you want to see in a goaltending prospect.
All right, before we continue with Greg and round out the top four and some of the other guys that he has ranked, just need to take a quick break here. There's no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with the powerful tools that help you find match candidates. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. So join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked-on. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 job credit now at Indeed.com/locked-on. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right. So what are some of the other names that you really kind of like as we kind of move down the, not the top guys, but kind of rounding out some of the rest of maybe the top 5, top 10 guys that you really like? So
Yeah.
I'll let you rapid fire guys you just want to talk about.
Well, the two other in the top 4 that I mentioned, we've had the 2 Canadian goalies and the 2 Finnish goalies are the other 2 that I really, really like going into this draft class. Eemil Vinni is one. He's another, not super tall. He's 6'2", so he's average to above average in terms of size, not small. But what jumps out to me is how active he is in the crease and assertive he is about situations. A lot of goalies, younger goalies especially, will be passive and just sort of let the play come to them and react to the play. He's the opposite of that. He's going to go out and get it if he can, which isn't something you normally see from a younger goaltender like that, which I really like the way and the success he has playing that way. And the other thing is he helps himself out a lot with the way he controls pucks off his hands. And it's long been a Finnish staple that they have great ability to just suffocate the puck when it's anywhere near their hands. And he's got that. And that's another great attribute to see for a young goaltender. And he's one that's another very exciting goalie that I would be over the moon if I was a team that was able to grab him early enough in the draft. And then, as I mentioned, the other Finnish goalie, Kim Saarinen, he's probably the first one that fits the bill a little bit more in terms of what the Sharks might be looking for in a goaltender, and that's the size. He's 6'4", very wiry sort of frame, but he's balanced and he's really strong. And the way he follows the puck around the zone, he keeps access to his edges extremely well. And what that means is he's not dropping into the butterfly too quickly, because as soon as you drop in the butterfly, you lose the ability to move left and right. In order to move left or right, you need to load a leg and push. But if you keep your edges and stay on your feet and keep that patience and avoid that super strong urge to just drop down in the butterfly, you have that ability to move left or right. If there's a quick pass or if there's a deflection, you have so much more mobility. And again, that's another trait you don't see a lot in younger goaltenders. It's something you got to work on a lot, but he's very good at it. And that's a really good sign in my eyes. And the other thing for him is he tracks the puck really well. And that's, that's one of the first, things on the checklist that you got to get off most of the time when you look at goalies, but he's at the top of the class in that. And that's what puts him in that top 4, group that I was talking about. So some exciting names, as I said, they don't come without flaws, these 4 goaltenders, but all very, very, capable guys that I think will play in the NHL at some point. And, like I said, Saarinen's probably a little bit closer to what you're looking for. If the Sharks value size and mobility, he's a guy, that I would probably look at for them to target if that's what they're going for. And there's another Finnish goalie as well that's a bit out of the top 4, but still in the mix there. And he's also 6'4", Vidi Luivara. He's another guy who's very long and lean, but he's a better skater than you'd expect for a big goalie. A lot of big goalies kind of lumber their way around the crease a little bit. He's not like that. He's very smooth. He's very quick, post to post on his skates, which is great. That's something that a lot of bigger goalies take a ton of time to develop, and he's already got that. So that's a really nice thing I like about Luivara. And just his details are extremely good. Most Finnish goaltenders have really good, post integration and their ability to move post to post while down on the butterfly. He has a bit of an advantage because of his size. He doesn't need to push super far to go from post to post. He can stretch from post to post with just staying down in his butterfly. So there's definite advantages to having size like that, and he takes full use of that. And that's another guy. If you're looking for a taller goaltender that can really move around the ice, he's a guy that kind of fits the bill that you were were looking for.
So I have a question. One guy that's finished at the top of the North American rankings, Mikhail Yegorov, who you have not mentioned. Is he just not your cup of tea, or like, what's up with him?
Yeah, he's not one of my favorites. I still have him in the draft range. I would pick him a little bit later in the draft. He'll probably go a bit higher just because of his reputation. But he's another guy. He's a bigger goalie who does lumber around the crease a little bit, like I was talking about. Unlike Luivaro, where he's a little smoother and nicer when you see him move around the zone. Yegorov, from what I saw, just has choppy footwork and the advantage of being big is you don't need to move around the ice a lot, but when he does, it's not good, at least from what I saw. And it's something you can work on. At least skating is something that always comes with time. And it's not something that I think is going to just sewer him as a prospect. But, there's just a lot of little things about his details that I didn't like. And he always seemed a little apprehensive with his save selections. And again, that's another thing with time that will hopefully work itself out, where you become a little more confident, a little bit more, you get a few more games under your belt. You have that game experience, which save selections will work in certain scenarios. It just felt like he didn't have that yet. He was really struggling sometimes. And I don't know if it was just the speed of the USHL that he was playing in or what it was, but it looked like he was still adjusting a lot as the season went along. And that's, again, like he's still on my list. He's still in there in terms of the group of goalies I think that should be taken in this draft, but not one of the top guys, at least in comparison to the other names that I mentioned.
Just as a refresher, right? You mentioned the skating. We talked about this last year, but just as a refresher, talk to us like we're five again. Why is it important for goalies to have good skating? Again, as an idiot, I'm like, you have to skate, from one side of the blue paint to the other. But just as a reminder for us, so
sure. Well, everything's interconnected. Everything you do as a goaltender affects other things that you do, and skating is it's one of those foundational tools that you need to really get worked out first before you can build other skills in your toolbox. So with skating, it's when you are able to get from point A to point B quicker, you're able to set yourself quicker. And that's the key. That's really the key as a goaltender, is that if there's a pass, from one side of the ice to the other, can you get there, get your feet set with depth so you're not right in the back of your crease most of the time? The quicker you can do that and set yourself, the easier it is for you to track the puck. If you're late getting there, if you're slow getting across, tracking a puck while moving is the hardest thing to do. It's impossible. Your eyes can't do all of that while in motion. It's just not physically possible. So right from the get-go, you're putting yourself behind the eight ball as a goaltender if you're not getting there and getting set before the shot's taken. So that's why skating is so important, because what gets you from point A to point B quicker? Your skating ability. So if you really struggle, if you're lumbering around the crease and you're always late getting set, it's like a ripple effect. It affects everything else that you do as a goaltender. You're not going to track it. You're going to let out a bad rebound because it's going to hit you. You're not going to see it coming. And it's just, like I said, it's sort of like a snowball effect that when your skating is poor, your other areas start to struggle. And it's not because you're particularly poor in those other areas. It's just because one of your base foundational tools, your skating, isn't up to par. And I think that's pretty important for a goaltender. I think, especially as you get to the next level. And that's really all I'm trying to do is, someone looking at players for the draft is, are they going to be able to transition this to the next level? And if they don't got their skating, it's a pretty clear no. I think you're not going to be able to transition to a faster speed of play if you're barely able to keep up with the speed of play at the level you're at.
All right. You mentioned some other guys here. So kind of some other guys who you think could be potential draft guys to look at. And then we'll get into Mike Grier kind of targets here. So some of your other favorite guys in the draft.
Yeah, there's a few guys that are high up in the draft that are, second and third year eligible goalies. I've talked in the past. I'm not huge on taking those guys, so they don't really jump off the page as much to me. There is one second year eligible I'll throw out there for the Sharks, though, as a bigger goaltender that might catch their eye. But another guy out in the CHL playing in the Quebec League, Keegan Warren. He was ranked, last I checked, he was 10th in the North American list. I have him pretty high. He's in my top 10. But he's another one that I really like out of the CHL this year. Another guy, he's sort of like Leenders, where he plays a bit of an unassuming style. He's not going to jump off the page to a lot of scouts. but that's when things are going well. He's not going to be in desperation a lot. He keeps a really narrow stance when the puck's moved around the zone, and that gets back to what I was talking about, being able to move left to right really quickly. It keeps him really patient, which again isn't a trait that you see a lot in younger goaltenders. And I just like the way he does that. And he's not an overly big goaltender. He's only 6'2", but the way he positions himself and how in control he is what sets him apart in my eyes. So he's another one out of the Canadian League, at least, that I really liked as one of the top guys outside of the top 4 that I mentioned, but still really, really high end prospect that you'll want to be happy about if your team gets. And another one is one from the U.S. National Team Development Program that I really like. John Parsons is his name, and he's another guy who's got a lot of size. He's 6'4". He had some ups and downs this year. I think both goalies in the U.S. National Development Team Program kind of did, but they got such a reputation for what they're able to build there with the coaching that they receive in that program. And the biggest thing for Parsons that stands out for me is just how well he tracks the puck. And that's, again, one of those foundational things that you look for along with skating. You want to be able to track the puck and the speed of the shots. And he did that really well. I think that was something that he stood out, at least from when I was watching him. He can still be a little over aggressive at times and lose his net and be out of control and give you the heart attacks that you don't want to see every once in a while. So if he can, it's called net awareness, and having that ability to know where the net is behind you and be able to pull off moves to kind of whip yourself back into the frame of the net. If you can work on that stuff a little bit more and just stay within the frame of the net more often, I think he's got something there with the size that he has, starting to use it to his advantage a little bit more rather than, just kind of spilling out of the net all the time. And he still makes the saves at this level, but you can see at the next level, it's going to become a problem. So, again, another very exciting guy just in terms of the way he's able to track the puck. But at this point, once you're outside of the top group of goalies in this year's draft, you're starting to get to those goaltenders that have a few issues that are not glaring, but just things that they'll need to clean up at the next level if they're going to succeed as a prospect.
All right, before we finish with Greg, where we try to find the perfect Mike Grier goalie, and we also discuss goalie paths and their development, just need to take a quick break. All right, before we get to some of the Mike Grier kind of profile guys, kind of more of a fundamental question or a philosophy question. If you have 2 goalies who are kind of ranked close to each other, but one is, in maybe in the OHL path compared to one who's going through the European path where they, I think has a quicker chance to play against tougher competition in men. Are you leaning one way or the other, or like, how do you kind of go through that development process, or do you have a favorite?
I don't think I think every goalie is their own sort of path and their own, everyone has success in their own way, right? And that's just, I've seen it as a coach and coaching other goalies, right? And you can tell that just the schedule of certain leagues and the coaching they receive and just the practice schedule, the college schedule works better for some guys, and the pro sort of style schedule of junior works better for other guys. And I don't know, like, I always take every goalie as a case by case basis. So I don't really have a preference for whichever way. Like I said, as long as they're eating up games, and I think that's the biggest thing for a young goaltender. You want to practice and you want to get in there and have them with a good coach. But the biggest thing for me is where I see most young goalies struggle is their situational awareness, and the only way you get better at it's like how the brain works essentially is just repetition, right? And every goalie will tell you when you go to practice, there's a ton of repetition and it's just muscle memory. But the only way to get those true game situations memorized and understand how plays develop is by playing in games and playing in high speed caliber games. So as long as they're playing at a high level and getting as many games as possible, I'm happy with the development path for a goaltender, because that's what it's all about.
Just makes it, I know some people are very much like, if you stick to the European route, because they're going to be playing against tougher competition. But again, I think as you mentioned, like the best way to get better at playing games is to play as many games as possible. And each path has their own way. So let's try to find a Mike Grier goalie, right? We've seen the way he has been aggressive in acquiring a specific type. Look at Mackenzie Blackwood. big guy, very super athletic. Getting Georgi Romanov, who nobody had heard of really until he showed up on the Barracuda. Really big guy, super athletic, and had himself, I think, a really nice season. You look at even acquiring Devin Cooley at the trade deadline. Big guy, uber athletic. So let's find a big uber athletic goalie for the Sharks.
Yeah, there's another one I mentioned and teased a little bit earlier. He's a second-year eligible goalie, but he's been getting a ton of traction, and he's on the scouting list. Pavel Moisevich, who is playing in the VHL, which is kind of like the AHL for the KHL, and he's huge. He's 6'5". He's massive, but he can move, and that's the thing that sets him apart from other goalies is moving laterally, and not just his ability to be explosive and move laterally, but to stay tight and not open up. And that is a big issue when you get to the larger, I've said in the past too, that there's kind of a sweet spot for goalies that you want to be in. It's kind of the 6'2" to 6'4" range. Once you get bigger than that, 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", you open up a lot of holes every time you move. And that's why those goalies try to play so efficiently and so conservatively, is because if you get them moving, when they lift their arm, that 6 and 7 hole under their arm is a lot bigger than for a smaller goalie that's moving around the crease. So he stays tight. He stays, within the frame a lot. He doesn't, that's really using his size effectively. When you have a goalie like that, who's able to stay within the frame of the net, it's intimidating. Like, it's intimidating as a shooter that you never see any net when he's in there. So that's very positive. I really like what I saw from that. Very simple mindset to his game, just stays conservative, like I said, deep in his crease, and quick, short routes around the crease. So I wonder what his overall skating ability looks like, because you never really see him open up and let it go, because he's staying pretty deep, but he can afford to play that way because he's 6'5" and he has that advantage over other goaltenders. So a very intriguing prospect, very, like I said, a second-year eligible guy, kind of slipped under the radar, I guess, that first year. This year he's been making a lot of waves and will probably be drafted. And I see him as a guy that, if that's your mold that you've described, then he certainly fits the bill for what the Sharks are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds, again, Georgi Romanov, nobody had heard of him, came over and was starting games for the Sharks by the end of the season, because one, they had nobody else, and two, he had a really nice season, especially kind of compared to where he started and kind of where he finished. And I think something this year is, especially with Thomas Spears, who's the Sharks goalie coach, you hear about all of the Sharks goalies from them, just how much work he's done with them, and kind of gives you some hope, where it feels like the past few years before Spears showed up, where it felt very meh when it came to the Sharks goalie development. It seems like now they might have found their guy, and that's always the hard part, is finding your guy who can help with these young guys, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, a lot of goalie coaching and the boots on the ground stuff just comes down to relationships. And that's, the biggest thing with goalies, and it's a unique position. It requires unique coaching. And sometimes it's not a slight against a certain coach, but it's just the mesh isn't right. It's just, they don't, it just happens sometimes. It happens with any workplace, right? So it's sometimes you just get a new face in there, a new voice, and it works with the goalies that are there. And, I've covered Vancouver for a living, and we've had the luxury of Ian Clark being here for many years. And, he's a guy that commands a ton of respect, and he helps out the organization immensely in their goalie scouting and in the way they just develop their goaltenders, so having someone like that who, you can start with someone who doesn't have a huge resume, and they end up earning that respect. And I think you might have something there with Spears.
I mean, you mentioned Vancouver, Silyev, who's starting in Game 7 as we speak right now, and a guy who was drafted a couple of years ago and is now, potentially carrying the Canucks to a Western Conference Finals. You guys will know by the time you listen to this podcast, but right, having the right goalie who can help find the right people and put him in the right place.
But let me be clear, like Ian Clark is a special case. Like, the Canucks went out of their way to get him and retain him, and he's on another level. He's like one of the Allaire brothers, essentially, in terms of the respect that he commands. So, but that just shows you that investing in your goaltending development, investing in the right coaching, pays off, because you have this for how many years now have the Canucks had this pipeline of just goalie after goalie that can come through the system and
pulp them out. Yeah,
and that's what you want. That saves you the money in the long run too, right? Because you can get goalies that are Vezina caliber, like Demko is, on a contract that's, was he 5.2 million cap hit? Like, it's ridiculous what he's making. So when you can do that, and I think that's what, is the only thing that's going to make GMs actually invest in their goaltenders, when they can see the dollar return that you can get from actually developing and trying your goaltenders.
So yes, develop, please. Thomas Spears, just let him cook. He seems like he's doing what he's doing. Greg, thank you so much. I know you are going to try to watch some of this Game 7. You also have your own game that you have to go to. So where can the people find you, buddy?
You can find me on Twitter /X, Greg Balloch, Balloch, and on Elite Prospects. We have our big, pre-draft rankings coming out, and it's going to have all my info plus more than what I've given you today from a lot of these guys. I've ranked over 40 goalies for the preview this year, I believe. So it's a good one. It's, I can't speak for the player side of the preview, but from what I hear from the player scouts and people outside Elite Prospects, it's one of the best out there. And I'm just so happy to be part of it, because I just love talking goalies, and I love watching tape on these guys and giving you the goods, because I have an obsession and I can't stop watching goalies.
Do you tell the other scouts to back check on their reports
about the goalies, or
just as they're writing reports, just yelling back check on them? It's
yeah,
they're they got to help out as best they can.
They absolutely have to pull their weight and back check.
Pull their weight, block some shot. They need to block some reports. They got to back check. Got to play a full 200.
I've watched way too many hours of goalie tape this year for them to slack on that. So yeah,
no,
it feels like playing like an average goaltender's job, right? You do so much work, and then your teammates just have to do the bare minimum, and then you're good.
Just get the puck in the other's net and keep it away from me.
No, they're awesome at Elite Prospects, though. They do so much work, and then for subscribers and stuff, they actually post all like the meetings and stuff, so you can literally see the work that goes into it. It's pretty awesome stuff.
No, the Elite Prospects Guide, one of the best. I always look forward to it, and it's a huge guide for me as I get through getting through the draft and after the draft, and learning about all the new Sharks prospects and stuff. So, Greg, thank you so much for your time. We'll chat again soon, buddy. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed my conversation with Greg discussing goalies. It's a tough position to scout because of so much stuff that goes on in front of them that they honestly may not have control over, right? And the situation that they are dealing with, the playing time, all that stuff sometimes can be a little bit out of their control. So it's nice to have Greg on to really help us nail down some of these goalie prospects, as I do think the Sharks are going to have to continue to try to find the goalie of their future and add more pieces to the pipeline. I know they have some guys in the AHL now, but you look behind that part of the prospect pool, and it's pretty barren, to be honest. And I think Mike Grier is really going to have to try to add some more pieces to that as they look to trying to find the goalie of the future. So, that's going to be it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow, where we'll continue to do more fun stuff, off-season related. Maybe we'll start breaking down some of the Sharks previous draft classes. Maybe we'll talk some more off-season free agency stuff. Who knows? So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. Until tomorrow. Bye, friends.